Yeah, when you're traveling, you always think you're going to miss out on something and there's something else to do. So you're like, I can't do the stretching because we've got to go out because the sun sets at 4 and I've got 15 things to look at. And then you end up doing it and you realize, oh, we've got all the time in the world. So it's about like making sure that we put in place our practices that make us feel secure. You can't forget those. Like we put those systems in place for a reason. We have to keep going, like stick to it. We build our life from the last block, like the Egyptian pyramids.
What I found with things like the mosques and the churches is they don't share the energy. They pull the energy in and then they keep it. So like with mosques, when they do the calls, they're actually calling the energy in. They're calling the people in.
We're all pretty much the same, doing the same, seeing the same. There wasn't much really to do. So if we're all seeing and hearing and eating the same, we're pretty much identical. We're just another sheep in the field. Whereas now we're all creating our own identities where I'm going to live my life based on my morals and principles. And it probably will be different to the next person.
Also, in ancient times, the priests would spend the time to meditate and learn and study. But these days, I think anybody can have a practice and anybody can learn how to meditate and how to find answers, how to trust the answers. It's so important that when you've got an intuitive feeling that you trust it. With the priests in the temples, they would have learned not to question their intuition, to follow intuition. So at the end of the day, we're all the same. We've just got different levels of mastery.
Just quickly, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who still listens to the podcast. I started 4 years ago, and since then I've had over 1 million downloads. I get 5,000 downloads per month, and I've had over 200 different guests. So a massive thank you to everyone who still listens. If you could please do me a favour, if you could rate and review the podcast, that would be amazing because it helps get the podcast out to new, conscious people like yourself. And my goal is to awaken as many people around the world. You can also follow me on Instagram. It's YesKingOliver. Should you wish to see what I get up to on my day-to-day moments. Back to the episode.
So this is my first podcast back since I've travelled around Europe, and it's the first time I've done any form of travelling. When I was 18, had my awakening, all I wanted to do was travel the world, Asia. Didn't really care much about Europe because you don't think about Europe being a really hot, amazing place with beaches. Actually, it turns out when you go around Europe, you see a life that's very similar to, say, how us in England live, but very different. You see all the things that are wrong with, say, England, and how we could actually be a better country by doing certain things. And as I went around Europe, I was seeing the different ways that people were living. And then you compare it to your own life, and you realize that all the problems in our own lives are just in our head, because everyone else lives a very similar life. They've got families, they've got jobs, they go out in the streets, they go to the town centre, but it's all very different everywhere you go. And what I realized is that life is very simple with just the basics. I realized that most people are just doing and being, and that's it. Whereas other people around the world, they're constantly trying to heal and work out stuff and try and find something to do and spend their time going over there to find, is that what they want? And then they come back and then years passes by. And actually, people in that part of Europe are just living and they're being, and they're just following what their parents did, living and being. There's nothing complicated. There's no trying to create an online business. It's just the basics. So all these problems, I think, are just created by like the Western modern world, where if you take everything back to what it was, they're just people working locally, meeting up with friends, having children, bringing them up, taking them to school, and repeat. And it was incredible to see the simplicity of the people in Europe and how happy they were, and that you don't need much in life to really truly be fulfilled and whole and content.
And I can tell you that's not just in the UK. I'm in South Africa and we've got exactly the same over here. People running, rat race, trying to get things done. And then we have like a subculture where there's people who are more chilled and relaxed, and it's about surfing and chilling and doing yoga and all of those things. So I think that wherever you go in the world, you're going to see that. You're going to see a variety of people that are more holiday and chill, and other people that are doing the rat race. So I think you were more in the holiday zones, probably in Europe.
See, I was in the city part. So a lot of it was like obviously tourism and whatever, but a lot of it was just like locals. But I think it's more the fact that I've never traveled before, and so I've never
Yeah.
seen that. For people that have traveled, like you're saying, it's just normal. You go to other countries and you see that life is similar but also very different. Because this is my first time traveling, I'm seeing, holy shit, there's a life outside of London. I've known that, but not really experienced it and seen it. So to really finally at 33 go and see that has allowed me to really grow up and go from like a boy to an adult, because
Yep.
you have to grow up when you are in another part of the world by yourself and no one speaks the language. You are forced to become that adult version, as opposed to, say, asking your parents, where's the train station, where's the pub, what we're doing for dinner. You know, you are the person who's making all those decisions. It's just you alone, and really forces you to grow up. And everybody should travel in their life to give you perspective of what you have in your life and how the other side of the world live, good and bad.
I agree. I've always said that you grow up when you start traveling. So whenever it happens for you, that's great, because then you get to grow up and you get to experience things in a different way. And I believe you went to quite a few different countries in Europe. So that's quite a awakening and sort of like, whoa, what's happening here? Because each country will be different. You went to, I think, 15, you said?
Yeah, 15 different countries. A lot of them
Wow.
were like all very similar. And I realized that if you look on the map where they are, they're pretty much all similar. So over time, they would have all evolved and migrated from one country to the other, literally just like a train journey. And so now you have like all these similar cultures sort of just taking their traditions from their ancestors to the next place. So all the churches, all the cathedrals, very similar. The food's very similar. People are very similar. And you realize, well, we're just all humans are just the same. We're literally no different. We're just like a different, like a spectrum, like a different color. You put a different shade on, and it's just, oh, you easily could be my family or friend in England, but you speak a different language. But when you strip it back and just see them as a human and energy, we're literally all the same. And it's so great to see that wherever you go in the world.
Wherever you go. And you're going to Asia next, yeah?
Yep, I'm going to Asia, so Bali, India, and Thailand. And again, first time I've ever traveled, didn't plan to go to Europe, but you've gone from seeing like busy, and the next part's going to be hopefully just meditation, sitting with my thoughts and peace and reflecting on like, okay, I've been a child for the last 10 years. Now I'm an adult. Very quickly, what do I want? And eliminating all old patterns and paradigms that I put in place when I was a child, such as no marriage, mortgage, and kids. I want to travel forever. Now I'm doing it. I'm realizing you can't travel forever. It's not sustainable. Okay. And it's only because you're running from something in your childhood that is the reason why you're traveling. So it's very quick learning to get to this conclusion. Have you done much traveling?
Quite a bit, yeah. My first country ever I left, because I grew up in South Africa, was born here and raised here. And the first country I went to outside of South Africa was actually Malaysia. And because I always went like, I don't want to go to Europe, I don't want to go to the UK. All South Africans go to the UK. It's sort of like their pilgrimage. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to do something different. So I went to Malaysia, and I was there for a month on my own. And I landed there and just went like, wow, I'm home. And I felt completely comfortable there. Didn't speak the language or anything, but I just immersed myself and was there for a month, and then came back home. And when my mom picked me up at the airport, she gave me one look and said, how long before you go back? And I said, I don't know, maybe 6 months, maybe a year. And I think it was 4 months later, 3 months later, I was back in Malaysia. And then I had enough money there for, I think, 2 months. I think 2 months. And I gave myself a deadline. If I could get a job within that 2 months, then I'll stay. And if I can't, then I'll come back home. And so every day I sent out my CV and I would go job hunting, which was quite a challenge. But literally 2 weeks before, like a week or so, I had to come back. I got a job at a college, and I stayed for 2 years teaching graphic design and multimedia. And so I was able to live there, work there, and travel and explore Thailand and Singapore and Macau, Hong Kong, Beijing, and all over. So that was quite interesting. And like Beijing is very, very interesting because you arrive there and it's like you arrive at an alien country, like an alien planet altogether. No one speaks English. There's no English writing anywhere. And everybody's got black hair. And you go like, oh no, where am I? So that was quite an interesting one because I had to literally go sign up for lessons to learn Chinese and to find my way around. That was tough, but it was nice. It was quite an adventure. So I would actually like to go back to Beijing and go and explore that again.
So what me and my friend ended up doing was comparing countries. And I realized you can't compare the countries. Like every country is completely different. So I'm just going to say, why Malaysia out of all the places? And like you said, you felt home there. It's like, well, there's 300 countries. Like if you'd gone to Thailand, would you have felt home there? Is it just the fact that it wasn't South Africa that made you feel home? So it's like, you can't really compute why you feel a certain way in a certain place because each place is a completely different experience, like choosing a child. You can't choose a favorite child. It's okay to have more than one dish that you love, more than one country. Everything is a spectrum of everything at once. It's never just one or the other, which means when you take all this information we learn from traveling back to home life, we realize that it's okay to say get bored with our partner. That's just life, but you can choose to stay with them or not. It's okay to get bored of a job and just have another one. Everything is just a choice, and whatever makes us feel connected to that decision is why we make these decisions. But learning that life isn't just that, and it can change. You can change as many times as you want because you go out the front door and you go to other parts of the world and you see there is constant change, and it's like, well, nothing is the same. I don't have to choose one thing. I can have a laptop forever. I can get one every time Apple release a new one. That's fine. There's no wrong or there's no right, and it just makes everything fall into place of like there's no judgment, and everything has a different perspective depending on how you look at it, and it allows you to relax, actually, to flow, because you see somebody reacting differently to a problem that your friend would have reacted a certain way in England, and in say Germany or Austria they act very differently. So you're like, oh, well, my friends back home would have reacted like this way. They're not reacting at all. Oh, well, next time this happens, I don't have to react like that, because then a ripple effect happens of arguments. So it really makes you come home, which is what traveling is all about, making you come back home and realize what is home. And then you realize home is within.
Yes, exactly. But it is a feeling. I didn't have the same feeling in all countries like I had in Malaysia. So Malaysia, I felt really at home. Like people could tell me you must drive there and go pick up something, and I'll jump in the car and I'll drive without a map book or anything and never got lost. Whereas when I lived in Johannesburg for 6 years, I got lost on a daily basis. It's like crazy. And there's certain countries like the Netherlands, I arrived and I just felt at home. In other countries, I felt like a tourist. In some countries, I felt unwelcome, like Portugal. I literally felt like I was not welcome. And so each country is different, and each country's got something different to offer and to share. And I've also been to some African countries, which was interesting. So like Nigeria is quite hectic, and Mozambique, very different energy. And Egypt is just incredible. So if you ever go to Egypt, I think that you definitely have to do at some point or another.
Yeah, so those countries, maybe not Nigeria, but Egypt is on the
Skip
list next
Nigeria.
year.
Skip Nigeria. That's hectic.
Yeah. Yes, I know what you mean by the feeling of some countries make you feel like I could live here, and some you feel like a tourist. Bulgaria didn't really feel like home. Copenhagen, you felt like home. Budapest, you felt like home. Athens, you felt like a tourist, but you also felt like you could sort of eventually settle into the city life. So I get that feeling of some countries make you feel like home and some don't. But it's interesting because Malaysia is quite small, and I think you said Germany, Gothenburg, whatever you just said, that was quite a big one, and you got lost on different occasions.
Yeah, Johannesburg.
Yeah.
Daily.
Oh,
I
South
lived there
Africa.
for 6. Yeah, I lived there for 6 years, and I got lost on a daily basis. Don't
Yeah,
know
like
what
we've
it's
only come
like.
from we've come from small tribes, and everything is supposed to be like within half an hour walking distance. So everything is now outside of our immediate surroundings. It's going against everything that, you know, science says and what evolution has taught us. And this is where a lot of all these problems are coming, because we're going out to find these things, such as traveling to find ourselves, when actually we are where we were before we traveled, which was home. So all of this is just like a long version of getting back to home and actually undoing so much past parent trauma to get back to the same place, which is just literally we're just a human being existing.
All about remembering. So I think the best place to remember is on the yoga mat. Just have a daily practice and find yourself on your yoga mat.
How often do you go into a deep meditation when you do yoga?
Oh, every day. I do yoga every day. So I've got a set time, and I go to the yoga mat that time, no matter what. If I have a day where I'm traveling or something and I can't, then I will make it up, or I'll bring something else in, meditation or a different technique. But I've got a daily practice that I do, and I just check in every day. Do I do Kundalini today, or do I do Yin, or do I do like a power yoga, or a Vinyasa, or what is needed in that moment? I think people get hooked on one style and they go like, this is the only style that exists. And I've got lots of styles that I practice. So I check in each day and see what is needed. And some days it's a Qigong. So we'll just see what happens.
What I found was it was very hard to maintain a routine whilst you're traveling. Like my stretching, my meditation, my breath work, it all went out the window. It didn't exist. You're waking up whenever you wake up. There's like you're eating whenever you eat. So it is very hard when you are in a different environment and your brain has built a pattern based on your environment. So waking up at the same time, going for a walk at the same time, and your brain suddenly thinks, right, we're going to the gym after this. It takes a long time to build like a really permanent routine or pattern. You travel the world, it goes out the window. So I think next time if I do go traveling, which will be Asia, I need to imagine that this is home. What would I do at home? Stretching, breath work, yoga. Otherwise, you do lose this like core part of yourself, which is that groundingness. And especially when you're traveling, you need to be even more grounded because you're in a completely random, strange place, and things can be overwhelming and overstimulating unless you have that sense of grounding. So that's a good reminder. What you're saying is take your practices with you like it's medication.
Yeah, I don't take medication, so the practice is my medication.
Yeah, exactly. Like
that's what I like about Kundalini yoga. So Kundalini yoga, you've got different kriyas and you've got different practices. So there's mantra work, and you've got mudras, and you've got asanas, and you've got breath work. So what you could do is, in situations where you can't practice necessarily, you can do a mudra, or you can do a meditation, or you can do a breath work technique. So you could take an hour practice, or you can take an hour and a half practice, or you could squish it down into 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So it makes it very portable, and you don't necessarily need a yoga mat to even practice that. You can sit in your chair and do it. You can even stand in a bus and do it.
Yeah, when you're traveling, you always think you're going to miss out on something and there's something else to do. So you're like, fuck, I can't do the stretching because we've got to go out because the sun sets at 4 and I've got 15 things to look at. And then you end up doing it and you realize, oh, we've got all the time in the world. So it's about like making sure that we put in place our practices that make us feel secure. You can't forget those. Like we put those systems in place for a reason. We have to keep going. Like I had Tourette's growing up, and if I don't meditate, twitching comes back because I'm not grounding that energy that builds up. So it comes out in the form of like tension. So just a reminder of we put these systems in place for a reason. Stick to it. We build our life from the last block. And if you don't continue the blocks in order, then everything unfolds because we've built from the last one back, like the Egyptian pyramids. They built to the top from the bottom. They literally walked around with the brick and then eventually they got to the top.
Or so we're told. Maybe they built it from the top down.
Yeah, like you're seeing all this new technology.
That's a very interesting energy inside the pyramids. So wow, yeah.
I've got some friends that have literally just gone there and they're saying how incredible the energy is and that they could live there. And
Yeah.
when I think about Rome, that was incredible, all the buildings everywhere. Egypt, there's something about those places of like ancient humans, like the first human civilizations, like the energy stored in the environment, in the bricks, in the sand, in the trees. Yeah, amazing.
It is a interesting polarity there, though, because you've got quite a strong Islam presence. You've also got a sort of an ancient Christian presence in there, and so some of the temples you go into, I think it was in Karnak, where they had built a mosque right in the entrance of the old ancient Egyptian temple. And so I went to that temple, and as I went in, standing next to the mosque, I could feel almost like the mosque was pulling energy in, like it was sucking energy in. I was like, okay, this is interesting. Then I went into the sort of the main temple area, and it was radiating energy out, like it was pulsing. It was just incredible electric energy. And then as you go further into the temple, in the back of the temple, the Romans went in, and they had basically plastered the walls and then painted their Roman paintings over the hieroglyphs, and they made a little church there. And the church had a similar pulling energy as what the mosque had. And so I realized while walking through that temple, and I went through a few times just to check it again, and the sense I got was that these temples were really energy centers that was built to send energy out into the environment and into the surroundings. But with the newer religions, they're all about take, pull. So the mosque is pulling the energy, the church is pulling the energy, they're keeping it for themselves instead of sharing it and sending it out into the environment. And that was a very interesting experience in that temple, because once I noticed that, I was like, whoa, okay, this is interesting. Then I could pick that up in other spaces as well in Egypt. But if you get to some of these temples where they're still just a pure ancient mechanisms, if you want to call it that, they have a presence in the energy that they send out into the surroundings instead of pulling in, which is very interesting.
So, for example, right, all the mosques, say in Turkey, they're all like dome shape, and it goes up, and it's amazing, like beautiful.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Yeah. So if they're like omming and chanting and singing and praying, and they're all repeating the same scripts, energy will go up, and it will just go out into the air. Is that similar to what you're saying? They're about
It's similar, but
out.
What I found with things like the mosques and the churches is they don't share the energy. They pull the energy in, and then they keep it. So like with mosques, when they do the calls, they're actually calling the energy in. They're calling the people in. And looking back, when I lived in Malaysia, I mean, of course, there's millions of mosques there because it's a Muslim-ruled country as well. So there's mosques everywhere. They actually calling in the energy. They want you to come in and do the worship so that they can pull the energy. And I never realized that until I actually got to Egypt, and especially when I went into that one Karnak temple where I could feel the mosque and the church on either end of the temple with the Egyptian original style in the center. And you could feel the difference between the energies.
So you think there's a different energy between mosques and church and cathedrals?
I feel that probably all pull energy in. If you go into a mosque or a church, there's usually a sense of calm. Not always, though. I went into a cathedral in Sinai, at Mount Sinai, after hiking up and down for the sunset there. And in going into the cathedral, I felt uneasy. I didn't like it. And I sat down for a few minutes, and I didn't like it. And I actually felt like there were things attaching to me. When I left, I literally had to pull things off me. I was like, what the hell is this? And it was just some of the darkest energy I've ever felt in a place that I thought would be a very safe spiritual place. It took me hours to get the stuff off me that was clinging onto me from that temple or that cathedral, which is, again, another interesting situation as well. So I'd normally associate, I've gone into many cathedrals and churches where I feel very peaceful, loving energy, and you feel rejuvenated when you leave, but not that one. That's quite something.
Do you think it was your perception going in for whatever reason? Do you think it was the energy of
No.
the people in there? Do you think it was the energy of what happened back in the day? Or is it just whatever it is?
I don't know. I'm very open to any religion or things like that. So I don't let my perceived ideas about a religion stand in my way. So I've been in mosques before, I've been in churches, I've been in all kinds of situations, and different religions. I've explored many religions over the years. So I'm very open to all of that. When we went to this particular cathedral, there were some people who said they didn't want to go in, and I really wanted to go in because I actually like going into places like that. I like to soak up the energy. But when I entered in there, I felt uneasy. That was not a nice vibe. But I looked around and went like, okay, other people seem okay. Let me just sit down and see. And I literally felt like things were attaching. So yeah, when I left, I was literally breaking things off me. And people were looking at me like I was insane. And I was like, I don't care. I need to get this stuff off me. So in my work, I deal with entities and attachments and possessions and demons and things like that when I do energy healing. So that comes up. So I'm familiar with those energies. And it's not something I would expect to find in a church or a cathedral. So I was quite calm when I went in. I didn't expect to see anything like that or feel anything like that.
And obviously, like some churches back in the day, there could have been like bad stuff going on.
We
Like
have
there
no
could be
idea
like
what happened there.
punishments and rituals and maybe abuse. Like we don't know. And if we're very sensitive and in tune to energies, we are tuning into all energies. So if people are numb, they won't feel it. If it's just all happy and great, great. If there's just happy vibrations. But if there's like a kid back in the day, thousands of years ago, which was being like tortured and abused, we would pick up on that. And so it would make us feel uncomfortable. And all of a sudden that small negative energy, despite having all this positive energy, just becomes the same in amplitude. So we feel it. And because we're sensitive, we don't want to feel that negative energy. You've got to leave. It's very interesting because it's not just now, it's the history of that place and all the energy of every human being that's ever entered those mosques and those buildings
Correct.
and those churches, all stored in the wall, all echoing, and it's truly profound. And I found that a lot of the mosques at the same time every day, they would all call out. I think you said that they would sing like this mantra across the whole of, like, say, Turkey. You just hear this every day, and you're right. People will come in, so they're taking the energy in. What's the alternative to that? Will people just come on their own accord to give it out to the universe?
I think that religion had a time and a place, and probably still has a time and a place. I think in our human development, we got to a space where we needed to be gathered and perhaps protected and all stand together with one mission. And the church gave that. I think where we are right now, we are at a place where we've almost like grown up. We're not the little children anymore. We can do our own spiritual development. We can take responsibility for ourselves, and we don't necessarily need religion. Having said that, I'm sure there's still people who would need that. So I think each person's got their own journey and their path. I do feel you get to a point where you graduate and you sort of take responsibility for yourself, where you can step away from a religion, where you can have a spiritual practice and perhaps incorporate multiple religious teachings into your spiritual practice without any judgment or anything like that. So I think it's about responsibility at the end of the day. Can you take responsibility for yourself, or do you need someone to tell you what to do and when to do it and how to do it?
Yeah, so back in the day, like, we're all pretty much the same, doing the same, seeing the same. There wasn't much really to do. So if we're all seeing and hearing and eating the same, we're pretty much identical. We're just another sheep in the field. And so when the herd goes somewhere, the herd follows. You're just doing it. You're just ants just carrying the stick up the tree, following the other ant. While we're carrying the stick, who knows? We've been doing for thousands of years. Pick up the stick. Okay. Whereas now, we're all creating our own identities where essentially we're creating our own religions within, which is, I'm going to live my life based on my morals and principles. And it probably will be different to the next person. It's not just all the same ideology now. And because of obviously everything's online, we're seeing thousands of essentially church ideologies, religions, ways of living, from countries to religions to cultures to how animals live. So this herd mentality of we're going into one place will slowly start to disperse, and we will start to create our own identities and essentially our own religions, stuff that we do, which is our belief systems of follow this and you'll heal this way. Basically, a religion is our own religion that we swear by. The voice in our head creates it, and we follow that voice, which is our own intuition. Back in the day, the intuition was, say, the priest, and people would follow the priest as their intuition, you could say, because they didn't have their own voice or identity. And all this you can only really work out by going to these places like you did and sitting down and trying to work out, why do I feel this? Oh, because of this. And then, oh my God, everything makes sense after that.
Yeah. Now, also in ancient times, the priests would spend the time to meditate and learn and study, and they would build a relationship with the gods or whatever energies they were working with. And so they were the intermediaries. But these days, I think anybody can have a practice and anybody can learn how to meditate and how to find answers, how to trust the answers. It's so important that when you've got an intuitive feeling that you trust it, most people question that. And with the priests in the temples, they would have learned not to question their intuition, to follow intuition. So at the end of the day, we're all the same. We've just got different levels of mastery. And so once people master their own energies and they take responsibility for themselves, then you don't need the religion anymore. Then you can follow your own intuition.
What's so cool is imagine like before like the big mosques were created, you just had a person who was probably in tune and connected to God, his voice, whatever. At what point would he have been like, right, we need to create a building, it needs to be round because when I'm in it, my thoughts will amplify out. So we've got to make sure the tip's the same, it's all equal. Like the thought process behind the like first person who created a mosque, right? Because there's no guarantee that the other mosques didn't know about that mosque and then they copied it, like the pyramids. But essentially it's one person will have had to come up with the idea of the mosque. So for them to know that their energy will go out of their brain, out of the mosque, whatever, just shows you that all this information that we're tuning into now has always been around. So it's just always been there. So it makes us think like we're just recycling everything.
But it's all in the field. So, and also you've heard of the 100 monkey effect, where they taught the monkeys to wash their fruit. And when a certain amount of monkeys learned how to do that, all the monkeys in the area started doing that automatically without ever seeing that. And it's just when you've reached this tipping point, there's a quantum leap where it just becomes normal. So you may have had one or two people who built a mosque, and then when there was a certain amount, boom, all of a sudden they pop up and they're all the same. So
it's just a monkey thing. I haven't heard that.
Have you not heard about the 100 monkey? You must just look up that 100 monkey effect. I think it was an experiment they did in some island. It was or a bunch of small islands, and they basically taught one monkey to wash its fruit before it eats it. So it started washing its fruit, and then some of his friends would see it and they would start doing it as well. And when a certain amount of these monkeys learned to wash their fruit before eating it, all of the monkeys in the surrounding island areas that has no contact with this one island started washing their fruit the same way. So it's almost like a few had to do it for that energy to go into the field, and then it became, okay, this is what's in the field now, so now you all do the same.
It's the same as when a dog will have a wee and it will like just dig the earth like he's burying it. Obviously he's not burying it, the mud's just going over there. It's like, at what point did you learn that? You've not seen another dog do that. It's just like instinct, right?
In the DNA.
Yeah, exactly. It's like how do puppies know to go to the nipple when the mother puppy's just given birth? It's like blind. Certain things is just in the field. It's really amazing.
Yeah, those are reflexes. So human babies also have that. So normally with a human baby, if you touch them lightly on the cheek, they go, oh, they think there's a nipple coming to go. So it's a reflex. As soon
Really?
as they feel something lightly touching their face, they think that's the nipple and it's feeding time. So those are, we call them primitive reflexes.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So like the same with the pyramids, like that has to be the same as the pyramids. One person creates it in Egypt, and then someone in Mexico picks up on a similar thing, and then where the other pyramids are, it's in the field, because unless they travel, which at that point they probably didn't travel because it's miles away, how could they? And you're right, it's just in the field. And the 100 monkey thing gives basically that's how pyramids and mosques and churches all around the world are built the same. Even like with say in England, we've got in fields, farmers have big bricks along the wall to create like a fence. And then you go to other countries and they're doing the same thing. And you can say, well, it's common sense, but it's just becomes in the field. So yeah.
Someone had started somewhere.
If you had one day left to live, what is the one thing that you would tell the rest of the world?
Oh my God. I would just say breathe. Breathe. Your breath is your connection to the inside and the outside. So every time you take an inhalation, we are breathing air that was in someone else's lungs at some point or another. It was created or purified by plants. So when you inhale the external life force into your body, and your lungs is that transition point between the outside world and the inside world. And so when we exhale, we take our carbon dioxide from inside and we release that out into the air, which the plants then can absorb, and they can make oxygen from that. So I think our breath is our connection to the inner world and the outer world. And it's our one thing that probably shows us that we're alive. And it's something that we can control. You can control your breath. So yeah, breathe, because when you don't have it anymore, then you're just going to be a spirit and you're going to fly around. So I'd actually be quite excited to leave and go back to spirit world.
And is there anything you want to promote or plug before we finish?
Oh wow! Now I've got loads of things. I've got music on YouTube. That's the Starseed Light Codes. I've also got that on Spotify. I don't know. Yeah, I think the music, I guess. Otherwise, I do healing work. So energy work, a lot of, like I mentioned, entity removals, attachments, possessions, things like that. Things that usually send other healers running for the hills. I like those things. Yeah, and otherwise, I guess I'm always open for discussions and chats.
Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, please remember to subscribe, turn the bell notifications on, like the episode, and comment below. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's YesKingOliver. Take a look at the other videos to your side. And if you just want to listen to this podcast, you can do so on Apple and Spotify and most other platforms by going to talkwitholiver.com.